Welcome back, Better Call Saul friends. Today, I want to talk about the 5 biggest criticisms that I have seen of the Better Call Saul finale. Now, before we get into it, I actually really did enjoy the finale. I found it very satisfying. So I don't necessarily share all of these criticisms, although I do see where some of them are coming from. So what I've done is I've scoured the internets, the depths of the internet's Reddit, IMDb, YouTube comments, and I've picked up what I think are the 5 most prominent and probably most serious criticisms of the finale. Needless to say, if you have not seen all of Better Call Saul, you should not watch this video. I'm also going to be talking about Breaking Bad and El Camino, so if you haven't seen either of those, don't watch this video. And as I said before, these are not necessarily my views, but I'm trying to convey the argument, and then I'm going to share my own thoughts, and as always, I really want to hear what you think down in the comments below. So let's jump into it. Folks, we are going to go from 5 to 1. 5 is going to be the least consequential to the entire finale, and then number 1 is going to be the most consequential criticism that I've seen. So I hope that makes sense. Let's start with number 5. The bus chant was cringe. I'm not going to lie to you, friends. I did not like the bus chanting scene. It was really the only scene in the entire finale that I did not enjoy, or at least appreciate the way that Peter Gould probably wanted us to. Peter Gould, of course, wrote this episode, and he co-created the show with Vince Gilligan. If you have been around YouTube, looked at the comments, looked at Reddit, looked at IMDb, you have no doubt heard a number of people describe this bus scene as cringe and over the top. I am personally not sure if that scene could theoretically happen in real life, although I have seen some people with firsthand experience insist that it is not out of the realm of possibility. It's clear that the first thing Peter was going for here was to let us all know that Jimmy McGill was going to be okay in prison. He was not going to be bullied or fearful of his safety. He did not want to leave us with that kind of taste in our mouths at the end of the show. In addition, and I believe this is Alan Sepinwall who wrote this in Rolling Stones, but he said that the chant of, quote unquote, Better Call Saul, no, I'm not going to sing it for you, was in a way, it was a homage to the entire show. It was them, the writers, the show producers, everyone celebrating the run that they've had and the success that they have achieved. I actually don't mind the writers taking a victory lap of sorts at the conclusion of a fantastic series. If that was actually the case, though, I do wish it would have come about in a different way. Whatever the exact rationale for including this scene, it was my least favorite part of the finale, and I think the criticism of this scene is fair. The 4th biggest criticism I've seen is that the Time Machine book Symbolism was pretty surface level. A few months ago, I mentioned in a video that I might need to read up on the book The Time Machine, since at that point in season 6, we had seen the book mentioned in multiple episodes. Now, I still have not read the book, and I only have a vague idea of what it's about, but clearly, even reading the Cliff Notes version of the book was not necessary to actually understanding the purpose that the book had in the entire Better Call Saul story. The introduction of the book, as many people mentioned, was quite literal and did not necessitate a deeper examination. Jimmy simply kept the book not just as one memento of Chuck's that he had, but as a way of showing that deep down he was at least thinking about going back and doing things differently in life. No, he was not able to express that outwardly until the very end of the show. But I personally do not mind that we did not have to read this book in depth to understand the point that the writers were trying to get across. However, it's undoubtedly true that you did not need some kind of deep examination of the time machine to really understand what the writers were trying to do. So it didn't detract anything from me, but I do see the general point that some of these criticisms are making, but it just wasn't an issue in my mind. One thing before we move on, the show writers have confirmed that the book that Jimmy has was actually Chuck's book. So Chuck at some point must have given that book to Jimmy. Obviously, when Chuck killed himself and he burned his house down, there's nothing left, and I don't even think Jimmy took anything from the house. I think he made a point of saying he didn't want anything. So the book was not left over from Chuck's house. Chuck must have given it to Jimmy at some point before then that we did not see. Okay, moving on to number 3. The 3rd biggest criticism I've seen is that Jimmy got the worst ending of the 3 main characters in this Breaking Bad Better Call Saul universe. That includes Walt, Jesse, and Saul. Now, this one in my mind is debatable, but I do think it's true that Saul got the worst ending. So let's go to Walt. Walt's cancer at the end of Breaking Bad was back, and it was just a matter of time before it took his life. And he was ultimately killed by that stray bullet of the machine gun that he planted in his car. But was his death really that bad? He got almost everything that he wanted. He got $10 million plus to his family. He got to see his family again one last time. He made a name for himself, which was always at the top of his mind, and he freed Jesse in the very end. It absolutely was not perfect, as his family hated him. Hank died, and he did die alone. But he died in that lab, the one place and the one thing that really made him come alive. I know the end of the show plays the song that says, "I guess I got what I deserved," but I really don't feel like Walt got justice. He got off easy in my book. Jesse, let's move on to Jesse. Jesse did not have as glamorous of an ending in Breaking Bad, as he did have to endure 6 months of slavery at the hands of those neo-Nazis, as well as watch the death of Andrea in front of her house. But after that torture was over, as we saw in El Camino, he got a new start on life in Alaska. So Walt dies, but he was going to die in a few months anyways, and Jesse's a free man at the end of all of this, which means that Jimmy being in jail for 86 years could quite realistically be seen as a much worse punishment, especially when you consider the crimes that each of them committed. Walt is easily, in my mind, the worst of the three, but both Walt and Jesse were murderers. Jimmy came somewhat close to being a murderer with Marion, but that's not who he is. He never had that in him. But whoever said that life was fair, that we all get exactly what we deserve in life, or that we even get what we deserved compared to people close to us? Life is not fair, and just because Walt and Jesse had arguably an easier ending for their characters, that does not mean that Jimmy's ending was somehow bad or misguided. As we heard from the prosecutor in the video, in the finale, Jimmy certainly did enough to justify many, many decades in prison. So to me, comparing the fates of these three characters is interesting, but it is not indicative of good or bad storytelling. Sometimes bad people get off easier than they should, and this does not take away anything in terms of enjoying the finale on my end. But I'd love to hear what you all think on that point down in the comments below. The second biggest criticism, and this is going to be really similar to the first biggest criticism, so bear with me here, but the second biggest criticism I've seen is that I guess Saul, at that point, Saul changed his mind too quickly about the deal. Now, as we all remember, Jimmy's on the plane. He's ready to take his 7-year deal when he finds out that Kim will be avoiding criminal trouble, but will very likely have to face Cheryl in civil court, and it's going to ruin her financial prospects for the rest of her life. As an aside, I really don't think that would bother Kim all that much, as she has never portrayed herself as someone in it for the money or the luxurious lifestyle. Okay, but back on track. Jimmy hears this from Bill Oakley, and then within however long it took for Bill to go to the bathroom in the plane and then come back to talk to Jimmy again, Jimmy has decided that he's no longer going to go with the 7-year deal, and he's orchestrated some kind of scheme in his mind where he can repent in front of Kim. So let's say it took Bill 5 minutes in the bathroom, and that's that 5-minute window that Saul had to change his mind. The main criticism here is that 5-minute window, or maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe Bill had an issue and he was in there for 10 minutes. The criticism is that 5 to 10 minute window is not enough to do a complete face, a complete 180, and that short of a switch is too unrealistic, because this is a guy who has been slowly going down bad choice road as he transforms from slipping Jimmy to Saul Goodman over the course of many years, and he has been firmly entrenched in the Saul Goodman mindset for at least the last 6 years. Now, I'm going to address this point in my last criticism, which again, it's pretty similar. So let's go on to the last point here, which was it was out of character for Saul to take 86 years instead of 7 years. And so this is the slight distinction here. The second point that I mentioned was that the 5 to 10 minute window was way too soon for Saul to change his mind. And then the main criticism here is that it is way, way out of character for Saul to ever take 86 years instead of 7 years. Hope you see that differentiation. It's okay if you don't. Okay, now again, this is not my own criticism, but I've seen this in a number of places, that it's out of character character for Saul to take 86 years instead of 7. That this guy that we've been following, Saul, for the last 12 years in our lives, and at least 7 or 8 years in the show's universe, has hardly, if ever, shown any sort of remorse and regret for what he's done. But when he was doing smaller scams, even when he was doing smaller scams in the Slipping Jimmy years, he had no regrets. And as he turned into Saul Goodman, he embraced that life head first. And for the writers of the show to suddenly, in the last 15 minutes of the finale, to turn this into a redemption story is extremely out of place, and it's out of character for Jimmy McGill and Saul Goodman. We have not really seen him wrestle with any of his misdeeds in any season that we've had. And then we're suddenly supposed to believe that he wants to change and reform himself? For a somewhat loud minority of people, and they're definitely in the minority, this did not satisfy them. This isn't where they envisioned Gene could realistically go, and they feel let down. Now, it's absolutely true that Jimmy and Saul that we see in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is unable and unwilling to explore his emotions. He throws away the card that Kim gives him in season 4 or 5 with the therapist's name on it, which frankly might have stopped this entire cascade of events if he just had gone to a good counselor and therapist. Every time when he's offered a chance to delve deeper into what's really going on, he avoids it and he ignores it. So in the last episode, the writers give us a glimpse of Jimmy that we have not seen before. In the flashbacks, he's asking Mike and Walt about the time machine, which, as Walt points out, it's really just about regrets. This is the writer's way of saying that even though they didn't show it throughout both series, that Jimmy was thinking about doing these things. But I do have some additional thoughts beyond that, because that in and of itself may not be satisfying to these folks who have these two big criticisms. First of all, didn't Gene have time to contemplate everything he's done? He's been a lonely, somewhat depressed guy all by himself for at least 9 months. To our knowledge, the only relationships he's had are with his Cinnabon employees, who he does like, and with Jeffy the cab driver and his mommy Marion. So it's not like he's someone who is living a lifestyle that offers a lot of distractions. He's had plenty of time to think about everything he's done and ruminate on how he's gotten himself into this terrible situation. So even if he didn't become reformed on his own as Gene, he's had time to set the wheels in motion for this change to occur. As he's done that, he's likely realized that he is not happy as Gene, and he likely wasn't happy as Saul. In the courtroom scene where he confesses, he mentions that while Kim left New Mexico for Florida, he, Saul Goodman, was the one who actually ran away. That's a rather insightful comment, and it's not likely one that he came up with on the spot. It's likely a thought he's had before, but he has not verbalized it on screen for us. I've also done some thinking about how quickly some decisions seem to come to us. Often, it seems as if change in our lives comes quickly, like it did in the series finale for Jimmy. But let me ask you, have you ever had a decision in your life that you make that to others seemingly comes out of nowhere, even though you've been thinking about it for months or years? Have you ever had life give you clues along the way about something that you really need to do, but for whatever reason, you are not able to see it clearly? And then one day you wake up, the light bulbs come on, and you make your decision. So to the rest of the world, it may seem out of the blue, but internally, you know it's the right thing to do, and it's something that you've been thinking about for a long time. I know that has happened to me in my own life, and I think that's what happened to Gene here. Finally, we cannot underestimate the impact that Kim has on him. In the security room, where he was with the security guard eating the Cinnabons, and Gene gives his dramatic, "If I die tomorrow, no one will even care or notice" speech. It's clear that there's an element of truth in what he's saying, which Saul knows how to do that oh so well. He knows that he's all alone. He's got no one to turn to, no one to love. But if he confesses, he will still have Kim. So I think all of these different reasons explain and kind of defend against these two big criticisms that folks have had about this finale. That Gene changes his mind too quickly, and that it's unrealistic for him to take 86 years instead of 7. I think as Gene Takovic, he's very unhappy. He's lonely. He really has nothing left to live for. He sees Kim do the right thing and he says, boy, if only I could have done the right thing at some point in my life. And then he thinks about Chuck saying, hey, it's never too late to change your course. And that sets the wheels in motion. I also really think that he's been contemplating this for months as Gene, and maybe even for years as Saul and Gene combined. So I think there's a lot of different things going on here. I think they explained this well enough to my satisfaction, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do these explanations make sense? Did you even have these same criticisms? Have you encountered them? What has been your response to them? I'd love to hear what you think. I hope you guys liked this video. Really appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time.